Hi, everybody. It's Gypsy. Today, I would like to talk about spiritual memory. I've just been thinking a lot about this stuff today, which is why I'm talking about it. Homesteading is on hold for quite some time. Hopefully, I get back to that soon. Well, sooner than they're telling me, I should say. It's not going to be soon. Anyways, when you hear spiritual memory, I think people have a tendency to think spiritual memory is just like your memory in the front of your consciousness, your memories of this lifetime. In a way it is, but it's not really. Much of the time, it is more of like a very strong feeling, like your intuition. It's a knowing. That would be what I would classify as claircognizance, that type of psychic ability, where you just know. And I think we've all experienced that. A little hard to explain, but I think every one of us, at least once in our life, has experienced that just knowing. Okay. Now, I feel spiritual memory happens, well, one of two ways. First of all, and I feel this is probably the most common, you are accessing your higher self, that part of you that resides in the spirit realm, that part of you, well, that basically planned this life and has the knowledge. Yeah, it's kind of, I would have to explain that again, and I haven't in years. Like your higher self, now this is my version. This is just the way I explain it. Don't feel that it's like set in stone or it's right or you have a different version and that's yours. You can go ahead and keep it. But to me, higher self is more like the soul, and the spirit is the aspect of the soul that incarnates in this particular lifetime. So the higher self has several spirits who have incarnated several times. Okay, so you access that knowledge from your higher self. I think most of the time, accidentally, I hope. And other times you may have the thought in your head and then the higher self kind of downloads it if you're open to it. I think the second way to receive spiritual memory, well, is asking the spirit realm. And they will tell you, and let me tell you, when you do that, and they give you a little bit of information, it opens up your spiritual memory. Now also, your spiritual memory can come in visions too, okay? The psychic visions. Most of the time it's that knowing kind of thing. Sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. Now, with me, this one in particular that was most profound in my life was during my first pregnancy with my older son, John. I remember I was in the bedroom making the bed and straightening up, and all of a sudden I heard, "Your child will die before you, will cross over before you." Not something I wanted to hear. I kind of tried to suppress it, but it would keep bubbling up to the surface throughout the years. I didn't tell anybody. I was trying to convince myself that I was a first-time mother and just afraid. And I was afraid if I told somebody, they'd think I was nuts, or they would tell me the same thing I was thinking. But let me tell you, when my son was, I don't know, he's a toddler, maybe about 18 months, 16 months, somewhere around there, we lived in an apartment that had an enclosed patio. I was cooking dinner. He wanted to go play outside. So I said, all right, I could prepare the dinner at the dining room table and see out the sliding glass door. I said, all right, you stay right where Mommy can see you in the door, okay, while I'm cooking dinner. And he tried to do that. He said, John, if he had to make potty and, he wasn't potty trained quite yet, he would go hide in a corner and do it privately. And so I look up and I don't see my baby. And I just, panicked like any mother would. And I went out in the patio and I looked around and I didn't see him. Finally, I turned around and here he was standing next to the door against the wall of the apartment. And I remember I had the thought, like the memory came back to me, and I thought, one day that feeling is going to be true. That fear that my son is gone will be true. And I had that refresh that memory, even though I kept suppressing it, and it would come up because I worried about my son John more than my son Christian, and Christian was my wild child who would do things that, put this piece of gray hair here, this patch right here. Yeah. Anyways, that was one that I had. Thankfully, a couple weeks later, I think just to kind of put a little salve on the wound from that piece of information I received from my higher self, I had a dream that my son would be born on December 22nd. Well, this is my cousin's son's birthday too. So when I woke up in the morning, I called my cousin. I said, "Oh my God, Joanne, I just had a dream last night that my baby was going to be born on December 22nd, the same day as Chris's." And sure enough, he was born on December 22nd. So that was interesting. It was about a month before he was born. I unfortunately had a premonition. I don't know. This was more of an all-knowing feeling thing. I always had a feeling that my mother-in-law, this was my second, because I was married twice, my second mother-in-law would die before my mom. There's really no signs of her, about to cross over or anything. She was very active and everything. Well, one day she fell down the basement steps, and they said she would recover, but it would take about 6 months. But, I knew, I received kind of like a message, no, she won't. This is the beginning of the end for her. And she did die, I don't know, maybe it was a few months. I don't remember how long. It wasn't long. She died later. I've had many instances like that. Let's see. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, here's one. I think it was maybe around 2016. It was Halloween. There was this psychic who was like a mentor to me, and she's from Australia. Unfortunately, I have not seen any videos from her lately, in years actually. But I was watching one of her Halloween specials, and what she decided to do was she liked to interview famous people who had crossed over. So for Halloween, she decided to interview those spirits who were in the Salem witch trials back in the 1600s. So, of course, this is right up my alley, and I'm watching. I was fine through the whole thing. At the end, she is interviewing Giles and Martha Corey. And all of a sudden, I just got this weird feeling. It was a feeling of panic, a pit in my stomach. I was like, oh my God, what's going on? I couldn't, it was so weird. Now, naturally, as in this life, Giles, as in the current life, Giles spoke more than Martha did. Because she still can't get a word in edgewise when he's around. Anyways. I was panicking. So I heard my children, I have 2 babies in the spirit realm as well as my adult son, John. And I heard them saying, Mom, stop the video for a second. We want to tell you why you're having this reaction. I couldn't figure out what it was about. So they proceeded to tell me that I am the reincarnation of Martha Corey, and my second husband, Dad, stepdad too, yeah, he was the babies I lost. He's their father, and then my oldest son's stepfather was Giles. And I'm like, get out of here. But it was like so real to me. So real. The panic, the fear. And then, my God, hearing what happened to Giles, I couldn't handle it. It was something. And that's the only way I am sure of that one. It was an emotional memory. Okay, that's another way. It's an emotional memory. When you have a strong reaction like that, it could possibly be something like that. You would have to get verification if you're not a psychic medium. Maybe make an appointment with one, and they can tell you yes or no, or why you had that reaction. There could be some connection there. You're not actually the reincarnation of that person, but maybe you have a connection, you were there, whatever. um, these how spiritual memories work. Now, the reason, the birth of my son, the death of my son, my mother-in-law, and there are other things in my life too. I had that spiritual memory is because of pre-life planning. Now, I know many don't believe that, and it's okay. You don't have to. It's not going to make or break you if you believe it. This is just things I like to talk about. And this is my spiritual path, my own personal spiritual path, is spiritualism. So we plan our lives before we come into them, and we make contracts with others. We make these plans. All right, we're going to do this event, so it will benefit at least one person in who's involved. It will affect all of them. It will promote spiritual growth or bring some kind of knowledge or whatever. And it is dependent on how the spirit, when incarnated, chooses to handle it. If you remember to handle it the right way, because I have screwed that one up too. Anyways, so you're actually having a spiritual memory because it was planned. My son and I, his dad, his stepdad, his brother, grandparents, everybody who was here in the family, we talked about it and planned it. Now, one of the reasons John and I agreed to this, well, it wasn't, it was a way to speed up my awakening. But it was kind of a karmic thing. Now, karma is not a bad thing like people like to talk about. It's not revenge, really. In my last life, I was John's sister. And I committed suicide in my 20s. Well, to speed up my spiritual growth, decided I would be John's mom. And he would leave via suicide in his 20s, and we agreed to around the age about 26, and it was 26. So that's how I was having those kind of memories. For some reason, I don't know, when I was cleaning my bedroom, maybe I felt the need to have some knowledge that I wasn't aware of, and I kind of opened up to the spirit realm and my higher self. That little tidbit down. And believe me, 27 years I had to deal with that knowledge. It was hard. And I hate to say it, no offense to my son either, it was kind of a relief when it was finally over. I know that's a horrible thing to say, but I didn't have to worry about him anymore, and I know he's happy, and he's, nothing's ever going to hurt him again. So anyways, that's what spiritual memory is. It is not like, all right, you remember something that happened when you were a child. That's a regular memory, okay? Where spiritual memory is either some kind of spiritual knowledge when you're not incarnated, or maybe spiritual knowledge of a past life, plans of when certain people in your soul group are going to be leaving this life. For instance, my son and my mother-in-law. Now, and I did not tell anybody about my mother-in-law, especially my son Christian and his dad, because that would not have served them in any way. I kept it to myself. I did. John was still here at the time. My mother-in-law went first. And when I talked to John, I could not tell him because he was not into spirituality then. He is now that he's dead. Anyways, I told him it's the beginning of the end. He goes, Mom, how do you know that? They said 6 months. All I said was something like, I just know. I have a strong feeling. And I ended up being right. And that's how that works, because we all talk about these things. We plan them in the spirit realm and enact them here. So that is what spiritual memory is. I am going to leave you with that. Blessed be, and make it a joyful one.